Welcome back to the bunker. This is episode number 2, and I'm your host, PREPPERINES. Today, we brought in the expert with the subject being hand-to-hand combat. He is the Colorado 2021 Golden Gloves champion. He's trained in Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and boxing. He's been training for 9 years, and he's competed in all 3 classes. They call him Rocky. He's boxed at heavyweight 201 pounds champion, and he trains currently at the Touch of Sleep boxing gym in Inglewood, Colorado. The man, the myth, the legend, Luigi Griego. So stay tuned. We're going to ask him all the important questions as it relates to prepping and life on self-defense.
To me like this. He said, most of the world out there is sheep. They're kind, gentle creatures that can only hurt one another by accident. He says, then there are wolves. The wolves will feed on the sheep. They're the sociopaths. They're the criminals. He says, and then there are sheepdogs. The sheep are a little leery of the sheepdog. He wanders around, checks the perimeter every night, barks at the moon. He would never turn his teeth on the flock, but he yearns for a righteous battle. And when the wolf comes around, nothing else will do, and the entire flock is sitting there trying to hide behind one lonely sheepdog as he faces down the wolves. We're talking about a creature who is capable of confronting and dealing with combat and sustaining themselves across the long haul. The goal becomes to be a sheepdog, to be a warrior, to be the one that is ready to respond to the threats when the time arises.
Luigi, my man, how are you doing, man?
Good, man. How you doing, Freddie?
Awesome, man. I'm so glad you've joined us today.
Thanks for having me.
Right on, man. So some of you guys might not know, but me and Luigi, we go way back. We used to work together back in the day. He's a great man. Definitely someone that I admired as a friend, as a man. As we worked alongside each other back in the day when I was still doing construction. Now I think we should let Luigi have the floor. Luigi, why don't you go kind of tell us who you are, tell us, what you're doing, how you kind of found the self-defense world or how it found you, and just kind of fill us in on what you're all about, man.
Well, Luigi, family man, 3 daughters, married, still doing the same job that I was when I met you. What is that? Almost 10 years ago now, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yep. And, just walking through life, trying to be the best man I can, trying to live day by day and, just keep moving forward step by step, trying to be better each day.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, you've always been a force to be reckoned with. I guess is like the best way I can say it. I don't know anyone that can outwork you, man. And I've tried myself. I've tried to outwork you, and I can tell you that if you find anyone, let me know, dude, because you put in a lot of effort. And obviously, you're a father, you're a husband, you're a foreman, you're running the show at work, and somehow you find the time to also train after work late at night and get your reps in. Can you kind of tell me and our viewers, how does that whole dynamic play in, being a dad and then also working crazy hours and fitting in, your passion of training?
Man, it's definitely a juggling act. You got to find time for everything. Obviously we're on our ladders 8 hours a day, sometimes more. And then obviously I'd like to be there, I'm hands-on father. I like to be present in their lives. My youngest loves coming to the gym with me, so that makes it easy to, spend a little bit of time with her while she's here with me training. And, as my coach always says, is boxing's a lifestyle. Like, you can't half-ass it. You're either in or you're out. You can't have one foot in the ring. You play baseball, you play football, but you don't play boxing, man. So if you do it, you got to really dedicate yourself, with work and, trying to be a father and a good husband. Competing isn't always in the cards, but this is my therapy, man. I always got to try to make time for it to keep myself sane and out of trouble, you know?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. I mean, is this like something that you've kind of always had in your life? Like, have you always like competed with, like all the different classes of how you train, like whether it be jujitsu or whatever, boxing?
Well, I grew up just idolizing Bruce Lee, man. Just, watching
Yeah, for sure.
Dragon and, Chinese Connection, practicing every kick and, jump and everything I could pick up from the man. So, was kind of a knucklehead, got in a lot of street fights growing up, just, and I learned pretty quick, like, hey man, I can definitely keep people away from me, and that led to trouble, man. That led me nowhere except down the wrong road. Ended up in a situation where, I donated 3 years of my life to the state because of the violence. And, when I came home, I wanted to harness that in a better way. And, honestly, getting into the trade with you, Lee, or, my foreman, Lee Fidel, he's the reason I actually stepped into the training, of going into a gym, because anybody could hang a bag in their garage, punch it around. But until somebody's sitting there, going, hey, man, you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. You're not doing that right. You never really know. And, so Lee would show up to work and he'd be talking about it. And I'm like, this skinny, and, he'd show up with black eyes. And I was like, wow, man,
Yeah.
this dude's like really doing this, man. And I'm just flapping my gums. Yeah. And so, when we got our classification raises as apprentices, it finally came in the budget, and I stepped into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu first and foremost. Was the first art that I decided to actually go and train in, because, that's what Lee was doing at the time. And it's that external motivation, man. At least for me, somebody going, come on, bro, if you go to the gym, dude, I'll go and I'll roll with you, man. Like, if you get into jiu-jitsu, I'll show up at your gym a couple times, man. Like, that external motivation was really a good driving force to get me started. But man, once I started, I was hooked. I couldn't stop.
Do you think that you would have done it eventually without him, like without a gym partner? Like, you think you would have still ended up doing it?
Eventually, but I don't know if I would have, stuck with it so much, because it's a little discouraging at first, especially, being a big, strong guy. We all think we're alpha males. We all think we're the Billy, and you go into a world and you get humbled real fast, and you almost give up on it right away. You're like, wow, man, like that little guy just choked me out. I'm 60 pounds heavier than him. And I'm speaking that from experience. That actually happened to me, a little 130 pounds put me to sleep. And, I was like, wow, man, maybe this isn't for me. And, I went to work the next day, told Lee about it. And he's like, really, dude, you better get back in there, man. And so I stuck with it. Yeah. And that led to Muay Thai at the same gym. And that was actually what I had my first fight in, was Muay Thai. And, and then before my first Muay Thai fight, one of my coaches was like, hey, man, go and see this boxer. He'll help you sharpen your hands up. So I came down here, and about 8 years later, I'm still stuck just boxing, man.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a perfect segue into a little bit of footage of you competing and you training. So here we go. Let's roll into that.
Boxing out of the blue corner and representing Colorado, New Mexico, Luigi.
Well, there it is, man. Live shots of the man doing his thing. I guess let's start out with the question, man. So So let's say you could go back and you could talk to your younger self, at the time when you and Lee started going to the gym, and you could go back and kind of offer some advice for how to get started. What would you tell yourself? How would
Uh,
you say it?
if I can go back and, kind of motivate myself to, the younger me to step in there, I really would have tried to do it a lot younger, before it became a detriment to my life, because like I said, I found out pretty young that I may not, be the heavyweight champ of the world, but I knew right away that I could defend myself pretty well. And unfortunately, that kind of led into being a bully, So if I can go back and tell my younger self, I would say to harness it at an earlier age. And it probably could have been somewhere else, because starting at such an older age, competing wasn't really a whole lot of in the bag, because I had the career, the kids. So if I go back, I just, say do it a little bit sooner and, turn that aggression into something more positive than what I did.
Okay, so what about what's your words of advice to, someone who wants to get in and start training, but they don't even know where to start? And let's say, they're closer to our age. Like, what's the barrier to entry? Because, I think a lot of people are gonna, let's restart that. So, okay, so I got a question for you. To the people that are wanting to get into, mixed martial arts or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, whatever. I mean, if you're going to want to start at our age, obviously it seems like there's a barrier to entry, it being, am I too old to do this? Can you speak to that starting now at our age now, if you're mid 30s or in
Well,
your 30s?
well, any advice I have to someone our age trying to get into it, man, is it's never too late. Like boxing, they have a master class division. It's for 40 and up. There's options even in, jiu-jitsu tournaments, they have age bracket up to 40 and above. So my advice to that is it's never too late, man. And, what I try to tell everybody, the hardest part about training, and even just whether it's training, going to the gym, the hardest part is showing up. You gotta get over that mental block of saying like, it's too late, I'm too old, I can't do this, I have too much on my plate. Because once you show up, man, you're there. You've already paid the membership, and then at that point you're only throwing your own money away. So I would just say Google whatever discipline you fancy, whether it's boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, karate. There's no right sport for anybody. They all tie hand in hand. You need all of them, in the world of mixed martial arts. That's what it is, mixed martial arts, right? So, any advice I can give to somebody, just get over the hump, just show up. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. So what if, okay, so here's another scenario. Let's just say that it's not possible. It's not possible to make it to a gym for whatever reason, right? And let's say, I mean, because I could think of this for myself, like I could tell myself to lie that it's not possible. There's no way I can make it to a gym, but I still want to pursue this somehow. Is there any way that anyone could start, practicing some sort of self-defense coming from absolutely nowhere at home, like YouTube University or whatever? Do you know any
Absolutely not.
ways?
There is plenty of ways to train at home. I say it all the time. I tease people. I learned how to box on YouTube. Just
Yeah.
watching my favorite boxers throughout history, trying to mimic what they do. But there are some great channels that will teach you, the basics of boxing, the basics of taking care of yourself and being a better self. Because again, as I say, it's a lifestyle. You can't show up here hungover and expect to get in the ring with one of us and, just because you knocked out a dude at the bar the night before, So it being a lifestyle, that's a big part of it. Even at home, you're not going to want to sit in front of YouTube with a bottle in your hand, like you have to take it seriously. I mean, if you look at most people and if you watch street fights on YouTube, they don't last very long, do they? Most of the time people are gassed out in that first 30, 40 seconds. So being healthy is a huge part of that. You know, a little bit of cardio will go a long way.
So that's a good. So yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. So it's like before someone was going to start to get into this, whether they're going to a gym or wanting to start at their house, like what's a good training regimen to other than just starting? Because I assume that like you could probably just start and realize how out of shape that you are. I know from my own personal experience. I got a bag hanging here, then I'll get after it for 3 minutes, and after a minute and a half, I'm like, holy crap, and this isn't even a real human being, right?
Right.
So where's a good starting point just to be in like I don't know, I guess a mediocre spot of fitness to be able to start to get into it?
I wouldn't say is any real start point as to your physical health, because that's all going to come with repetition and time. Some people need to show up here to try to get that healthier because, again, maybe they're like me and need that external motivation. Someone saying, okay, I need you to do 10 push-ups. I need you to do 10 squats. I need you to, some people do need that just to get the start. But if not, your basic calisthenic workouts at home, you don't need any weights. All body weight is perfect for anybody to start with. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, jumping jacks, burpees. I mean, those are a great starting point for anybody. Jumping rope, jogging, all great start points.
Gotcha. Well, is there like a regiment that you follow?
I kind of have a weird sporadic, our job is kind of my workout a lot, me always picking up the heaviest piece of pipe I can pick up, zipping back and forth across the job site as fast as I can. So I personally get a lot of my cardio and strength and conditioning at work, and then here I don't lift a whole lot of weights because I tend to bulk, and in boxing, we're trying to stay as slim as possible. We fight at lighter weights. I don't know if you noticed in a few of those videos, I'm always the smallest guy. So, I'm trying to get down to a more natural weight class. So I run, I jump rope, but a lot of shadow boxing. I do a ton of shadow boxing, and I love to jump rope, man. Road work, running is not my friend. I'm kind of, on the heavy set side, so it kills my knees. People just kind of have to cater to what they feel like their comfort zone is to start with, and then we'll bring you out of your comfort zone when you get here,
Yeah, gotcha. That's good to know, man, because I think, if you don't need any weights to get started, like there's just one less excuse that you can make for why you can't do it, because it's not easy, man. It's not easy when you have kids and when you have a full-time job and you get out and you're gassed from work or you're mentally exhausted. And then you're like, oh, now I have to go to the gym and go train. I'm sure you have days like that where you're like, I just can't do this today. How do you mentally, like mental toughness, what keeps you coming back? I mean, you already kind of spoke to like this is therapy for you. What can you speak to like how being mentally fit also plays into the whole self-defense world too?
Well, what keeps me coming back, and the biggest part that plays into the self-defense world is it helps you control your emotions. If you can be in a controlled environment, right? The natural reaction if somebody yells heads up, what do? Right? You immediately panic. It's that fight or flight. So being here in a controlled environment, padded gloves, headgear, a coach, a ref, other fighters watching you, everything in these gyms are there for your protection. Even at the amateur fighting level, there's so many safeguards for your protection. And in a controlled environment, if you can learn to, harness that fight or flight rather than panic and turn and run, that mental fitness is something that can only be trained because, like I said, the natural human reaction, heads up. So for me, that mental, building is huge to be here, being in that controlled environment, knowing that if it gets out of hand, somebody's going to be there to break it up. But you're able to stay calm under pressure.
Yeah. I would think too that, heaven forbid you ever have to defend yourself, that all the stress inoculation that you're putting yourself through, even with just training, not even competing per se, is going to play through to the real world, right?
Absolutely, man. I don't know if you remember how kind of high strung I was when we first met, and I was kind of a hyped up guy, tended to be a snapcase. And, through the years of training and stuff, I've learned to calm down, relax in those high stress situations. I'm able to step back and think now rather than react, rather it really has changed the man I am, because one, now I have nothing to prove to anybody, because, if I have something to prove, I'll enter a tournament or something. But, I'm beyond the point of trying to prove that I'm a tough guy. I don't have to prove that to anybody anymore, so
Right.
that's huge, and for the tough guys, come to a boxing gym and, see how tough you really think you are, and that was what I had to learn again from when I first started jujitsu. You'll get humbled up real quick, man, and you learn your place on the food chain.
Yeah. So, have you ever been in like a scenario since you started training where you've been on the street and someone, tried messing with you and you actually use some of the tactics and training in a real life scenario?
I am very proud to say that since I've been training, I have not had to put my hands on anybody in a self-defense, scenario. The best self-defense is self-preservation, right? If you can avoid the conflict, avoid it. There's no point, right? Especially if you're just a guy who, maybe plays a little bit of hoops on the weekends, goes and hits the treadmill. Don't think that you're capable of, taking out the guy on the street, the drunk guy just harassing you for his own drunk benefit. I've learned to be able to step back and go, you know what, man, I don't need this. I don't have to do it. If you come at me, that's a different scenario. But I've been able to talk my way out and, back away from every situation since I started training.
Yeah, it almost kind of feels like the guys that are the most highly trained and like, I guess essentially lethal weapons, like they know that they could really hurt somebody, are the guys that are also the quickest to trying to, calm a situation if it starts to get out of control. Do you agree with that statement?
Um, yes and no. For the most part, yes. Like, my coach, he's a Hall of Fame boxer. He's been around the world. Biggest teddy bear you'll ever meet, man. Like, he'll never go to that place with anybody, is, as I've learned, why? All it's going to do is put me in a situation where I may be in court. I may hit this guy and he might end up in the hospital. And, you consider things like that, and as there's no specific, your hands are registered weapons. That's a myth. But say I were to hit somebody and not stop myself, the judge can go, hey man, with all your training, with all, better. So I am going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law, So for us, we just try to avoid it. But there are absolutely guys out there who train for nothing more than to be a bully. And there are guys that way.
That's interesting. So even though they're like training in a gym and they're getting their skills better, you're saying there's still people out there that are using it for, I guess, evil rather than good.
Yes, absolutely. Just like what is that? With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So unfortunately, not everybody is that responsible. I've seen it on job sites with Lee, man. Right when I first started training, one of the drywall guys got into it with another, tradesman, and the first thing he says is, "Oh man, I train at this gym. Come and show up and see me." And it's like, come on, man, you really have to go there? Just let it go.
Right. Yeah, totally not worth it, man. Yeah, that's the one thing that it's like self-preservation is always, and like you'll have like the biggest, toughest guys who've been in the military tell you this, that it's walking away from situations because they're not worth it half the time. And even if it's a dangerous situation, there's still no reason why you shouldn't try to, not get in a fight, right? Not have to use lethal force, not have to have any physical contact with somebody else. I think, in our community, we are very driven by like all these what if scenarios, like what if this happens, what if this happens, and like a lot of the mentality there is, well, once I run out of what ifs, then it's like you started at, well, what if I get approached and someone tries to, rob me or whatever? Oh, well, I'm gonna try to stay cool and back off. But if I can't do that, then I'm gonna go to the step one, step two, step three. So being in your scenario with your training, can you kind of like lay out a scenario, like if someone with moderate to low level training, if you have a run-in with someone on the street and you get into a point where it's like, hey man, this is going to go down, from your opinion, what do you think someone should do?
Again, man, it's all kind of a situational, because not everybody's going to attack you the same way. Not everybody's going to have that first approach. But yeah, anybody with any low to moderate level of training, and they have to be engaged, I put my money on them, almost all the time. Whether it is just them, like Joe Rogan said, if you can do this for 30 seconds, you're probably already going to win that fight, because now that guy can't breathe. He probably just threw a cigarette before he attacked you, and then absolutely, I put my money on the low level train guy all day. I mean, and granted, you get those guys on the street who are just naturally powerful, naturally have, and unfortunately, those are the flight or fight. And sometimes you got to run, man. I mean, there's nothing wrong with running, Bruce Lee talked about how no woman, I mean, don't let me sound like a masculine, chauvinist, but unfortunately, 100, even 20-pound man, there's weight classes for a reason. If I grab a hold of a 120-pound man or woman, there's not much they can do regardless of training level, right? I mean, a lot of people would disagree with me on that. And yes, I've seen small jiu-jitsu women just absolutely annihilate bodybuilders. Watch it on YouTube, you'll see it. But if a big guy gets his hands on you and he wants to slam you around, man, he's probably going to slam you around. So it's back to that self-preservation. Can I dodge this guy long enough to get away from him? Can I get in, get this single leg takedown, and then get out of there so he can't grab me again? I personally always try to look for a way out rather than a way in. I'm a very defensive based boxer, so I feel like if you can get away without being scathed, that's your best option.
Yeah. So it sounds like, option number one is evade the situation. And then two, if that's just not possible, you're in a corner or something.
Go for
don't
the
let
soft
this
spots,
person.
man. Go for the soft spots. Eyes, fish hook. There's no rules to a street fight.
Right.
If you got to get away, man, and like I come at you, Fred, like, yeah, you jab me in the eye, man. You hit me in the throat. You take my manhood from me. You do whatever you got to do to protect yourself. And
Right.
any good self-defense trainer, because there are just women's self-defense classes and whatnot, any good self-defense trainer is never going to put it in your head and make you think you're a superhero. You see a lot of these fake trainers, who are showing guys how to disarm guys with guns and knives and stuff. And I mean, it looks really cool when he does it for a guy sitting there holding the gun loosely and allowing him to do it. So just, go for the soft spots and try to get away. I mean, if you're having to protect your home, there's no rules, man. You got to give everything you can at that point. And I suggest a bigger man, again, weight classes for a reason. I can never hit a 270 pound man hard enough to slow. I mean, I might be able to slow him down, right? Even with all my years of training, but I'm never going to incapacitate someone that size with one shot, right? So again, the health, the fitness comes in. Can you outlast this guy until he can't move anymore? You know, that's your best bet. Can you wrestle around with him until he's so tired that he can't pick his hands up and he can't stand up? Because you'd be amazed at how many people break when they can't breathe, when that, you know, that panic mode, and then they start to hyperventilate. And now you've already won the fight, and all you've had to do was protect yourself for 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to, you know, the physical fitness aspect of just, you know, not saying that you have to be some strong man or whatever, but just being fit enough to evade somebody. You don't have to have the skills and training per se is what you're kind of speaking to. But if you can evade, or you can throw up hands and protect yourself long enough to where this guy gets tired, you know, enough where he ends up either giving up, or you have time to get a shot in, or, you know, leave.
Exactly.
That speaks super heavily to people. And I think, you know, in our community too, there's so many people, man, that they have this idea of, you know, everyone's planning for when shit hits the fan. When shit hits the fan, it's going to be like this, and I'm going to do this. And most people think, you know, they're just going to arm up their plate carriers and grab the AR-15s, and it's going to be like a full-on civil war. And some scenarios, it might be that way, but I think more than likely, like, it's probably going to be like a death by 1,000 cuts, and we're going to have this slow degradation and this societal, you know, downfall. And I think we're kind of already seeing that. You know, crime's on the rise, inflation is hurting everybody, and people are doing, you know, whatever they can to get food for their families, and that's understandable. But unfortunately, like, the bad people that are out there are just going to be forced to do, you know, bad stuff, and the ones that were teetering on the brink are going to go that way too. And if I think there's a lot of people in the prepping community that, like I said, they've what ifed, you know, this out, and they completely bypass, you know, hand-to-hand combat and physical fitness as being a part of their preps, you know. So like prepping for being, can you run a mile? You know, can you shadow box for 10 minutes straight or whatever, you know? And like those compounded effects too, like, oh, now you shadow box for 5 minutes. Now can you run a mile? Because you might have to. Can you kind of speak to that whole thing of being like prepared before the fight starts?
Being prepared before the fight starts, right? Yeah. So like I said, boxing, martial arts, it's a lifestyle, man. You commit yourself to it fully. You have to, or you can't half-ass any of it. You know, you have to be in. So it's kind of funny. You know, say the zombie apocalypse. Have you ever seen the movie Zombieland? What's the number one rule? Cardio, right?
Yeah.
That's his number one rule. Right. Cardio.
Yeah.
So I say the same thing, man. Cardio, number one. You gotta be physically fit to handle it. You know, somebody attacking you, if you walk up a flight of stairs and you're winded, man, you're probably not gonna be too good in a self-defense scenario. I mean, it's how it is. You know, you only
for sure.
Especially people who, you know, not controlling your breathing. That's a huge thing in fighting. You know, not knowing how to breathe properly. You know, you know, if you see somebody breathing like that, walking around like that, you know they're probably not in very good shape. If you look at a lot of athletes, you look at boxers, you see us in the corner, we, you know, big deep breaths through the nose, nice controlled breathing. That's a big part of it too, man. Knowing how to control without hyperventilating in stressful situations, keeping the heart rate down, you know, and that's something only live action can prepare you for. You know, you can be in your garage and go through a million scenarios, but until you step onto a mat with a guy who's really trying to choke you out, or a dude who, granted, we may have padded gloves during sparring, but there's guys trying to take your head off, you know, trying to punch you in your mouth. If you don't know how to handle those stressful situations and keep the heart rate down, keep your breathing down, yeah, you gas out without even fighting, you know. You can just be trying to run away and gas out. And then what?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, cardio number one rule sounds like. I mean, for me, um, I have my bug out bag, like, and it's really not like a bug out bag. I carry like a 72-liter pack, which is huge, and I carry it's 60 pounds easy. And back when I first started this whole thing, it was like it was nearing almost half of my body weight because I was skinny as a rail. It's only until recently that I've started to put on a couple pounds, but um, obviously, like if you have a bug out bag or a get home bag like I do in my scenario, you need to put that on and walk and try to get some pace going and see how your body reacts, because in a stressful scenario, in a crisis scenario, you're going to be losing your freaking mind and probably hyperventilating, all because of the situation that's happening.
Right.
Compounded with the weight that you have on your back, you're not going to be ready. So, and it's not just that too. I think it's like you said, like we need to be eating right, we need to be sleeping right, and we need to be training and always like weight training's good, cardio I think is good. But the only way to really like stress inoculate yourself, I feel like, is kind of like, what you do after work every day. You go and you train, and that's because I don't know how else you would recreate that. What do you think?
And man, I'll tell you, there's no high or feeling like it, Fred. When people talk about, I don't know if you've heard of like the runner's high,
Yeah.
like, right. And then we fighters, we have the same kind of statement, there's I've heard it called flow state, where you literally get into this level of cardio to where, I mean, time almost slows down for you, man. You almost see punches before they come, and it's not just a physical training here, man. Like boxing is mental. They call it the sweet science, right? Because if me and you both know how to do this and protect ourselves, right? And we're trying to hit each other, how can I penetrate your defense? I have to start to strategically think, right? Okay, every time I do this, his hand drops. Every time I do this, okay, so now if I do this and counter over the top, it becomes a chess game where it is more of a mental game than it is physical. Who's smarter? Who's making the quicker decisions? Who made the better moves? Who thought 3 moves ahead, right? So it's you can't train for that. Like you can't learn how to play chess unless you sit down and play chess, right? I mean, you can sit there and read all the books in the world you want. Doesn't make you a grandmaster at chess. You can punch as many punching bags and walls or whatever you may be training on as you want. But until you're in that high stress situation where somebody is, going for blood, man, and this is a place where, it's awesome, man. When I leave work and I'm like, man, dude, I really need to punch somebody in the mouth. I got to go and do it, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no mental training for it except being in that situation, and we do a lot of fun things where, I'll be in the ring for 10 rounds straight and 5 guys will each take their turn on us, 2 rounds each guy, just round robin, and again, it's a high stress situation that you can't prepare for any other way, and then when you're in there and you're restarting the rotation on your 6th round and you're tired and you can't breathe, you have to mentally push through that, so say somebody breaks into your house and you want to protect your wife and your kids, Fred, right? Your girls, that's your number one concern, right? You can't get to your pistol in time, right? Guy gets a hold of you. You're mentally going to be thinking that whole time about your wife and kids, right?
Absolutely.
How do I
Yeah.
keep
100%.
this man away from me? Right? But if your brain doesn't know how to react in those high stress situations, what happens? Panic, right? You get into a spot that you don't know how to handle. And it goes basically with life. You get something at work that you don't know how to handle. You're like, oh my God, how am I going to get this done? Everyday life is the same situation. So if you're on this, someone's attacking you and you're trying to protect your family, you're thinking, okay, I got to protect my family. Okay, he did this. Okay, I feel him slowing down a little bit. Okay, breathe, Freddie, breathe. keep your calm. I feel him slowing down. I feel him getting a little bit weaker. Stay calm, stay calm. And now all of a sudden you have the upper hand in this situation because he failed mentally and physically.
Yeah, I think more than likely, I mean, dude's probably coming in with a plan, and we all know that plans go out the window right when you get punched in the face.
Mike
So that
Tyson
goes
said it
both
best,
ways.
right? Everybody has a plan till
Yeah.
they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, and even like, I listen to Jocko Willink, and he talks about, like on the battlefield, we all had a plan before we left the fob. And then when we got out there, he goes, it goes to shit every single time, and he goes, but that's why we have contingency plans for stuff. I liked what you were saying earlier, and I kind of want you to go back to that, about this flow state that you kind of get into. I'm kind of interested about that because I guess one, does that mean when you reach that flow state, is that something that you get into through reiteration of the action, where like you kind of said, like becomes strategy and time slows down and you can kind of see the punches coming? Is that because of all the reiteration that you've done and your body is in this like adrenaline fueled state, or what do you think that is?
It is absolutely with the mental training and physical training, and it's weird. It's hard to explain. Fred. I feel like it just really happened to me for the first time not too long ago, man. Where the punches were just flying in. I couldn't be touched, and the slips and the rolls and everything were just working the way they were supposed to work, man. And it was just happening though. There was no thought. It just flowed. It was just reactions, just my body and my brain sending that message to my body before I really knew what was happening. And I feel like that was the flow state that I've heard so much talk about it, to where there was it was all involuntary, it just happened. And it's a crazy feeling when, this punch is here and then all of a sudden it misses, You don't know how it happened, but it happened, and
Yeah.
watched every almost frame of it coming at you, dude. It's a really cool feeling, and I don't know if that's what people, who fight under the big lights and stuff feel like, man, but it's almost like everything goes away and, you're in this box of your own little world, and you don't have to think. It's just pure reflex and pure instinct. And, instinct is what kept us evolving from the cavemen, right? The survival instinct, the instinct to say, man, I'm hungry. I need to find something to eat, right? Those are all just human instincts. Fight or flight, right? It's a human instinct.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally, my wife will tell you that I'm totally like a freezer. Like she'll mess with me. Like, so, I mean, when you're driving a car, we've been driving a car for decades now, it comes second nature, and you zone out and you're not even thinking. You're on autopilot and you're driving that car, and you don't even have to think about putting on your blinker or slowing down at a stop sign, and you end up getting to work and you're like, how the hell did I even get here? You kind of like snap out of it. Seems like that's what you're kind of talking about as far as
that
like
would
you
probably be one of the closest comparisons I could give you. Is absolutely, it's just an involuntary thing that happens, like driving a car, man. You've done that 1,000 times on your way to work. You've taken the same route, right? You don't have to think. Okay, I just passed the Conoco. My left turn is coming up, right? It becomes that trained habit, that over and over and over again, repetition, right? And it is that way. It just happens. Who was it? I think Bruce Lee. He said before he started training, a punch was just a punch and a kick was just a kick. And then when he started training, a punch was no longer a punch and a kick was no longer just a kick. But when he mastered it, a punch was just a punch and a kick was just a kick. Just natural instinct,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think my instincts are like to freeze. I've always been a freezer, man. I'll just, like, my wife one day, I was zoning out while I was driving, and she's like, "This is the one way." And I was like, and I snapped out of it and I just froze. Like, I just kept driving. And She's like, you didn't even flinch. Did I scare you? And I was like, you scared the shit out of me. But for some reason, I didn't do anything. I don't know why. And it's like always that way. She'll come around the corner and scare me, and I just stare at her. And she's like, you're so hard to scare. And I was like, no, I was scared to death. I thought you were going to kill me. I didn't do anything. It's kind of scary because it's like, I don't know, if my day comes, hopefully it never does, where I get in a situation where I have to defend myself. I hope I don't do that. But I guess the only way to like ensure that doesn't happen is to like train that out of myself. So if like you're a freezer too, are you a flincher or a freezer? Like what is it? It's flight, fight, or freeze. Those are the three, right?
Yeah.
So which category do you fall into?
It all kind of depends, because like I'll be laying in bed sometimes and my wife will come running through the door. Bye! And I mean, but I don't know, like being at home, you're in a comfort zone though, you're not prepared for a high stress situation when you're sitting at home, right? That's your most relaxed, being in your bed, being with your family, you're at your most calm state, right? So when you're like, oh my God, dude, like what just did, but especially on construction sites, everybody's the biggest, baddest guy out there, right? So I feel like on the streets, I am on a little more high alert, when I'm at work. So I wouldn't say I'm a flincher, but more of a get prepared. Like I've been in situations where guys have tried to approach me and, it got a little escalated. And instead of, I felt myself, stepping back into my ready stance. And then before I knew it, I was like, oh man, what are you doing? Like, look down at my feet, I'm nice and ready to go. And for me, like I've always, again, kind of been a high strung dude. So and that might just be a train. That might just be how I grew up with, growing up around gangs and all. I've always kind of been on high alert, but yeah, it's something you train mentally for. You have to be mentally strong to be physically strong, because your mind will break way before your body ever does.
Can you kind of go back and talk about that a little bit more about, I mean, it sounds like what you're talking about is situational awareness. And it sounds like that kind of came naturally for you, for how you grew up or whatever. I mean, what are the things that you kind of look for while you're just walking down the street on the day to day? Like, is there any certain behavior that you look for, like certain signifiers that you would say, hey, that's somebody I need to watch out for?
Absolutely. Anybody using more than their 12-inch voice is fluffing their feathers. They're trying to establish some sort of dominance. They're trying to say, hey, I'm the loudest guy in here. Look at me. Right. So, I tend to, if someone's loud and obnoxious and boasting, those are the kind of guys that I'm really like, okay, this dude's he's going to start poking the bear at some point, and unfortunately those kind of guys are the ones who aren't going to come and approach, so you're what, 6'3", 6'4", Freddie, you're a tall guy, right? They're not going to approach guys like you, but you put me on a job site, I'm 5'8" with my boots on, in a long sleeve shirt. I'm a little guy on a construction site, right?
I mean, you also kind of beefy.
A little better than guys.
Yeah.
I throw a sweater on, man. You don't see the muscles. Like I'm a little dude.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Most time I have the sweater on, and I do, man. A lot of guys like to poke the bear, man. Like I don't know if it's because I'm usually the smallest dude in the room, but.
And you're not very loud. You're not very boisterous. You're always like kind of like stoic, I would say.
Yeah, I try to just kind of lay back in the cut, just again, like I don't have to ruffle my feathers for anybody. I don't care about being the toughest guy in the room. I don't care about being the most loved guy in the room because, everybody's scared of me. And that's where a lot of that comes from too, is like you get these bullies and, they have this big entourage, but it's because everybody's scared of them. Everyone standing behind them is like, they don't want nothing to do with that guy, but they don't know how to step away from it either, So it's just the loud, obnoxious guys. And it's not always just the biggest guys. There's a lot of guys with the Napoleon complex. I used to be one of them. I used to be that guy. Fred, I would walk into a room and I would size everybody in the room up. I, okay, I could beat him, I could beat him, I could beat him, I could beat him. And so the loud, obnoxious guys who are, huffing their chest out, like you can always see that at a bar. There's always the one guy at the end of the bar yelling about the football game, getting real boisterous. He's the only one who's that passionate about his team. The 100 other people in the bar are like, man, dude, it's a football game. So those are the guys I tend to try to keep an eye on. I try not to let them walk up behind me. When I'm at the urinal, I try to keep them on my radar all night. Those are the kind of guys that I look for. And then, the sketchy ones too, the dude who just doesn't say much. The guy is like, man, who's he here with? Like you don't know how that guy got to the party, but he's there. Those are the kind of things I always look out for. Just, if he's really sketchy or if he's really loud, I kind of, all right, man, I'm going to turn the brights on these guys,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For me, it's like, I don't know if it's really, well, no, it is. I'd say for me, I like to, like, when I get to a new place, whether it's a gas station or wherever, I'll do a scan of like all the vehicles, and then I'll do a scan of the people. And then I think instinctually everyone's like, yo, friend or foe, right? Just by how people look. And it's crappy that we do that, but it's instinctually in our nature. And I think it is what it is. But if I see anyone else doing what I'm doing, scanning and looking around, more than just like a scan, if it seems like they're really looking, that's for me some behavior that I'm kind of like questioning of, even though I myself am doing it. But at least, like if you lock eyes with somebody, you're like, hey, I see you there. And now, I see you. I can give a description of what you look like. And I see you, over there looking at me is like a super, as far as situational awareness goes, it's like you might have just gotten yourself out of a fight right there. Cause like this his head's not in his phone. He doesn't have earbuds in. He's scanning around. He's looking. He just locked eyes with me. Man, maybe we don't mess with that guy because coming up on his 6 probably isn't going to be very easy. So I think just being aware of your surroundings, even if it's just for like a quick scan and then you go back to doing what you're doing, is a good way to, kind of identify certain hazards in your environment. But, is there a way to, like, I guess, look at someone and kind of tell if like they have training or not? Is like there any like signifiers that you would say where you've walked into places and you're like, that guy trains for sure? I can tell.
It's hard to say if, to be able to look at somebody and tell if they train, because we're in the MMA era, right? Everybody's doing jiu-jitsu. Some of the people who come into my boxing gym, some of the guys I did jiu-jitsu with, like, if I seen them on the streets, like I'd have been like, yeah, dude, I'm taking that guy's lunch money for sure, and you don't know, man. It's hard to tell. You never really know who knows what. And, another back to Joe Rogan, like a lot of people is like, what have you done in your life that makes you that confident that, why do you think you're that badass? Because you don't know now. Like you really don't. Like, it used to be just the buff guys and, the real athletic guys. But, dude, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that world has introduced, made a world of killers that are undercover, man. Like, these guys are all showing up in their business suits and stuff. And then they throw on that gi and they're a whole nother person. So, unless they're flaunting it and, they got, maybe they wanted national golden gloves and they have a ring, wearing something like this. But then you got to think about the tap out and affliction era. Everybody was wearing a tap out shirt and an affliction shirt. Didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So it's almost impossible to tell, man. Because like a lot of times when I talk to people and they're like, wait, dude, you're a boxer? Like, no way. I would have never guessed that.
Huh. Yeah, I would have definitely, like, I don't know. When I first met you, I was like, yeah, this guy's scrappy for sure. Like this guy's scrappy. Like he could probably get down for sure. Like, but at the same time, you're super respectful and like very humble too, which is also sometimes when you have like someone who looks scrappy and then they're very humble, you're like, yeah, you don't want to mess with that guy.
Yeah,
Like he's nice
dude,
for a reason, you know.
silent killers, man. Like that's just it. You know, most badasses, they don't have to flaunt it, but
Yeah.
attack them. See
Well,
what
I would
happens.
say, I would kind of say too, like if you get in someone's bubble and they kind of step back and kind of square up and get in a fighting stance, then that's like one test.
That's
that
a
you're
great
good.
indicator. If they get out of this, you know, standing square and they turn into a bladed stance on you and they make themselves real small, I would say you got some trouble on your hands, dude. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, other than that, like, you know, I guess clenched fists, obviously someone's getting ready to go. As far as situational awareness goes, I'm trying to think, you know, for my viewers here, it's like, hey man, what are some signifiers of some guys that are some bad dudes that can do some real damage that you need to look out for? And yeah, it's more than an affliction shirt. It's body language. That's how, what do they, it's like more than 80% of our communication is body language, and the other 10 or 20 or whatever is verbal. And so I'm trying to like take your knowledge and all your skills and kind of pick your brain here for what you're seeing. And it sounds like, you know, you've kind of laid it out. Do you have anything else to add to that so we can move on?
Not really, man. Just like you said, situational awareness, you know, getting out at the gas station. Don't get out and throw your gas thing in and get on your phone. You know, like, especially in a dark, maybe the gas station is closed, you know, it's just one of the pay at the pumps. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to just throw it in and completely put the blinders on, you know, you're almost inviting trouble. So I would say, like, that's part of that self-preservation. Be completely aware of where you're at. Be completely aware. Okay, like this guy is, wow, he's getting a little closer. Okay, man, he's a lot closer than he was a couple minutes ago. Yeah, being aware of your surroundings is huge, man. But as far as body language, different people have different tells. I mean, look at just NFL players, for example. You got some of those guys who run out there and they're smacking their helmets and they're freaking out and they're getting themselves real jazzed up. And then you look over in the corner and there's Tom Brady down there, calm as a whistle, right? But he's a killer.
Yeah. Yep. Cool as a cucumber. Yeah. I almost think, like, for me, it's like you also got to watch like the loud, boisterous ones, like you were saying, like the ones who are puffing out their chests and like you're like, hey, look at me. It's also the guys that are doing the exact opposite of that, who are super stoic and watchful and don't talk very much. For me, that's a key indicator that, you know, this guy is watching what's going on. He has a read on everyone in the room. And to me, that's up for question for, you know, what their motives might be, because, you know, they're flying under the radar probably for a reason, or maybe it's just who they are. But I think that, you know, there's probably 5 categories that everyone falls into for me when I walk somewhere. Like if you were to walk into a bar, you got your loud, boisterous guy, you got your real quiet guy who's not really talking to anybody. Like you said earlier, who's he here with? He doesn't seem to be here with anybody. And he's kind of scanning and looking around and just kind of doing his own thing. And then you get the people in between there, which, you know, might be some guy drunk at the bar, screaming at the TV, or just had one too many and he's, you know, losing his footing and kind of sloppy all over the place. Someone like that probably wouldn't take much to make them, you know, lose their cool if you said the wrong thing to them or they misunderstood something you said, you know.
Yeah.
And then I would say too that it's the guys that are rolling in groups too, because you have that whole social proof mixed with, you know, alcohol. And this is for a bar scenario, but maybe even just like on the street scenario. You got 3 dudes walking together, and if they are not good dudes and you're a target, you're an easy target. I mean, there's that weird, sick camaraderie amongst men of like, let's mess with this guy, you know, because there's 3 of us. But if it was just one of them, he would have left you all alone because they're trying to be cool in front of their buddies.
Cowards, man. Those are the biggest cowards.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Power in numbers, absolutely. That's that's their game, and a lot of guys do that. You know, I've been jumped in my day. You know, I've seen my brother and my family be jumped. Power in numbers. You know, it gives. You know, we'll reference back to Napoleon, little guy, right? Napoleon Bonaparte, but you put an empire behind him, you put an army behind him, and now that little man became extremely powerful, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It could change all your actions, completely change your mindset. You know, let's say like, what is that?
And then,
Absolute
I
power.
wanted to just kind of touch base too on, talking about, unfortunately, there's like a societal stigma too of how people look, a guy with nice, clean haircut, smooth shave, maybe in in a business suit. Most people don't tend to look at him and go, okay, I'm threatened by him, but then I don't know if you remember my wild hair, crazy hair. I have my septum pierced, people kind of look at me and go, okay, that guy's probably a problem, and it could be completely switched, like, me, I may look a little wild, but man, again, I'm just kind of a teddy bear dude. I don't want problems. While that guy in his suit and tie, you don't know what he's doing behind closed doors. You don't know what's going through that guy's head either. So there's that kind of societal stigma where we see, even with like the big homeless influx that we've had here, just because they're homeless doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they're out to rob you or hurt you. But unfortunately, as a society, we look at that as, he's a bad person. I have to protect my family from him. I have to keep my daughters away from him. I have to, okay, we're going to cross the street to avoid him. But you don't avoid the guy in the suit and tie, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I don't think, don't judge a book by its cover. If you don't know what's under it, like, they're all equal threats when you know nothing, when you have zero intel. And sure, like, looks are all we have to go off of, but then it's body language. And honestly, like, you should just be here's the thing that I have too. It's like, when it comes to prepping, um, you know, the whole doomsday prepper show that like makes fun of preppers, it's so great because they're making fun of like these preppers. It's like, I'm prepping for this one thing, and it's like nuclear bombs or whatever. When it's really like, if prepping is a lifestyle for you, just like for you, training is a lifestyle. You said that it's not something you can half-ass. You have to go all in on it. I think that's kind of the same with prepping. So it's like, it's funny how, if you take these rules, they relate exactly the same. If you train in self-defense to be able to defend yourself, and then also be able to train to, go on the attack and go on the offense to cease the threat, right? There's some fundamentals there that, if you have those fundamentals, it doesn't matter if it's a big dude coming at you, a small guy, it's still the same fundamentals that come in, I would imagine, with training, right? I'm sure there's like some minute changes, but with prepping, it's the same stuff, man. It's like, you need to be physically fit. You need to be mentally aware. You need to be prepared with your food, your water, firearms, self-defense with your fists, and have contingency plans to be able to switch and move and react to your environment. And so it's like, you can't just train for someone to come at you, with a knife. You can't just train for a drug crazed homeless person to come at you on the street. It's like, it could be anyone, anywhere, anytime. But if you have those fundamentals, then you're going to be ready, or at least more ready than someone who's, not thinking like us at all. So,
Absolutely.
So I guess, we can kind of get into, I did this on my last show, and it's kind of where I get into like the theoretical, right? The theoretical, hypothetical situations that could happen. For what your skill set is here, self-defense, like, you've made this a part of your life, it's therapy. I want to go there next, but I kind of want to stop also with another question that I asked my last subject, and probably one that I'm going to keep going. But what are some non-obvious skills that transfer over in the self-defense world to real life?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I don't know, the non-obvious, huh? I guess it would just have to be, being able to stay calm. That's like, if again, with the high stress situations, they happen everywhere at work, and it all comes with repetition. So I guess the dedication is huge, follow through. Those are a few things like you can't teach, like I can't tell you to do it over and over again. You have to make that decision. You have to make that decision to show up. So obviously dedication to your craft, whether it's boxing, jujitsu, prepping, dedication to that craft, follow through is huge. And I think we've become as a society where it's like, okay, that didn't work out. I'm just going to move on to the next thing. It's that falling down and getting back up. I think that you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to get up and dust yourself off over and over and over and over again, because life isn't easy, whether it's defending yourself or just trying to be successful and feed your family. Like it takes some cojones, to wake up every day and go to work and say, you know what, man, like I hate my boss. I hate my job. I'm hurting, but you wake up and you take your ass to work. Right. And I think that's something that you have to have in order to make this work. And, even with what you do as far as the prepping, like you said, you can't half-ass that really, like, okay, you got a case of water, a couple cans of beans and some noodles. That's not prepping, right? That's like, okay, dude, like we're going to run out of food next week. So there's dinner, that's not the follow through, man. That's all I can say is, because I've seen guys come here, we call them our New Year's resolutioners. Every year we get this big boom of guys who are, man, I'm going to get in shape for the new year and I'm going to look good and I'm going to be a professional boxer. And then, by April, we never see those guys again. So just, if you're going to do anything, whether it be, painting pictures at somebody's house, or just be the best you can be at everything you do, don't settle for second place, don't be second best. You have to dedicate yourself to whatever it is you want to succeed at, whether it's prepping, boxing, the new job you just got, college, school. The follow through, man, I think is one of the most unobvious things.
Man, that was a awesome reply, dude. That was great. That was really good. So everyone has their own scenario of shit hits the fan, and it looks different for everybody. Do you have one for you? Like, what is it for you? I mean, big or small? What is shit hitting the fan for you?
Man, shit hitting the fan for me would be like, my pension fund collapsing, and, the market crashing, and, me taking pay cuts and not being able to, feed my family, and that's all very real. It could happen here any day. We just avoided the government shutdown, things like that. Those are the things for me, shit hitting the fan, like, I feel like our country is torn into two right now, and unfortunately there is no middle ground anymore. So if we're starting to fight amongst each other, man, like everybody in the world is going to see that too, right? If we're fighting with each other, we as a nation have become extremely vulnerable, right? So those are the kind of scenarios that I look at, and I feel like, with boxing, man, this place, everybody who comes into this gym is my family. Everybody here I love, I respect, and it's sad to see, a beautiful, beautiful country being so divided right now. And I am scared of what's going to come here in the next 4-10 years, based upon what's going on in our government, based upon, whatever side conspiracy theories you're looking into, it's all fueling the fire at the moment. And that's kind of, the scariest aspect for me, and, like meteorites and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, like the first thing that you should prep for, like before anyone starts prepping, is you should prep to lose your job because it's the most likely shit hitting the fan scenario. And then you speak into like, having less and how you deal with that. I also think you're right. Like me personally, I feel like we're in um, an unraveling of society, so to speak. It started with a division in our country. The last administration, I feel like, is when things started to ramp up. We had the pandemic, there was the summer of love with all the riots and stuff. And now, you know, the current administration, they ran on trying to unite the country. And I think that's a great thing. I just don't think with how the things that have transpired in the past that it was actually going to be achievable anyways. I don't care who you put in office. To be honest, I think we've reached a point where it's not really feasible anymore. And we have all this stuff going on in Israel, and we have to get involved with that. And on top of that, cherry on top is we got the election coming up, next year. And as well as I, man, it's going to be a divisive thing. It's like, it sucks. Like I'm sure in your gym, spar with guys that are right across from you that you call your family, and you have completely different sets of values possibly. And you one votes this way, one votes the other, but it doesn't matter, man. Like that stuff doesn't matter. Like it's these politics and everything are just driving everyone apart. And it makes me sick to my stomach, dude, because we've all forgotten that we're all Americans. We're all Americans. We're all on the same team.
Absolutely.
And pretty soon here, things get any worse, we're going to have to be like 9/11. We were reminded of that. And it was great.
Right.
People were so kind and generous to one another. And I hope we don't have to have another one of those experiences to remember that we're all Americans, but
Absolutely.
it might just be the way the history goes,
Just loving your neighbor, man. It's one of the 10, man. Love thy neighbor, bro. Like,
yep.
And if you can do that, man, I feel like as long as you put that positive out into the world, it kind of keeps the negative out, and when Freddie, I used to want to fight everybody on the planet. I used to really just bang heads with everybody, man. And when I put out nothing but crap into the universe, that's what I got back, man. I working dead end jobs, barely able to pay my bills. And I just hated the world for that. But when I stopped blaming everybody else and I realized that I was the problem and I changed that negative output, it changed what I was getting back, and I did stop having confrontations. I did stop putting myself into situations where I had to defend myself. And maybe, a lot of the times I may have been the aggressor. I may have been the attacker. I put someone else in a scenario that they had to defend themselves, and that's not fair for anybody. This is the land of the free, right? We should be able to walk up and down the streets at night safely, right? But unfortunately, that's not the reality of it. So I feel like just treat. I mean, it's like this age-old sayings, man. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't call people out of their names. Don't step on somebody's toes. Just if we could all just come to an agreement on that, man, there would be very few scenarios where you would have to even worry about self-defense,
Well, in the meantime, we still live in the contingencies, and hopefully things don't come to that. But I think it's just a smart move to do. I mean, you have your contingency plans, especially when you're a protector and you're the father of your in your household. Like you have a responsibility to be able to make sure that you can protect yourself and your loved ones. And I applaud you for making this your life, dude. It's very inspiring. And I definitely need to get all my P's and Q's, because I can say that for sure, like with all this prepping stuff, it's so easy to like be gear driven and like and have all the cool stuff, and then being like, oh, well, how often do I use that stuff? And like, oh, can I carry my pack, and can I run, and can I fight, and could I do all those things? You don't know until you actually start doing it. And you're a man that as long as I've ever known you, man, you do what you say you're going to do, and you live your life with a lot of integrity. And at the same, and also with that is like, no one outworks Luigi Griego, man. Like nobody I know is, I've tried myself, and I've never done it, and I don't know anyone that has done it, and I don't know if anyone could do it, to be completely honest. But man, I thank you so much for being on the bunker. I hope to have you back in the future. And I guess, if people want to reach out to Luigi for anything, he's a stoic man, so therefore he does not live on the social media like the rest of us, and I applaud that as well. But he is at the what's the name of the gym again?
Touch of Sleep Boxing, 3910 South Calumet, Inglewood, Colorado. Ask for Rocky. He'll get a hold of me.
That's where he's at. So you guys want a one-on-one with Luigi, you want to talk some things out, maybe see how you guys can get into training. And I'm going to take a guess and say maybe even get some training from Luigi. That's where he's at, and you feel free to stop by anytime. Anyways, we're going to end things here. Next week, we're going to be continuing our reach to look out to try to bring experts in for you guys and talk one-on-ones with them. I think I have just the guy. We're going to stay in the self-defense scenario, and we're bringing in another firearms training expert from Defenders USA, except this time it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about more hypothetical situations and strategies on how you can prep for certain scenarios and fundamentals of prepping as well. Luigi, man, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll see you again next time, dude.
Predators, it's been a pleasure, brother. It's good seeing you, man. Take care of yourself.
All right, we'll see you.